Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from today. Thank you for tuning into our Killifish webinar. Just to note that the session is being recorded. And the first thing to say is that this isn't supposed to offer comprehensive information about all the world's most impactful killifish conservation or even focus on projects and programs the world over. Over the next 90 minutes to 2 hours, we'll learn about some of the amazing work currently being done for a select group of species in the Mediterranean Basin, namely in Turkey and Greece. And we hope to follow this webinar up with a separate webinar later in the year to focus on further killifish conservation work being done worldwide. We have a real treat today to be joined by some leading killifish experts who will discuss some of the work that they are deeply involved with. After we've heard from each of the panelists, there'll be plenty of time for a question and answer session. So please introduce yourself on the chat with your name and where in the world you're joining us from. And please keep those questions coming. So to introduce the panelists, Baran Yoğurtçoğlu is a biodiversity scientist at Hacettepe University at the Department of Biology in Ankara, Turkey, and the regional chair of the IUCN SSC Freshwater Fish Specialist Group. He studies the diversity, distribution, and interactions of freshwater fishes in West Asia, focusing on how evolutionary history and ecological processes, including species interactions and climate change, influence their distribution patterns and diversity profiles. He supports the documentation and conservation of freshwater fish biodiversity, particularly in the Mediterranean biodiversity hotspots, by leading and participating in several projects. Baran will be talking about the recent threat categories and conservation priorities for killifishes in West Asia. After Baran has presented and spoken, we'll hear from Alex Cliffe, who is the Assistant Curator of Fish at the Zoological Society of London. He works with Baran on conserving the Achigol killifish, Anatelictis transgrediens in Turkey, and will speak about conservation actions and green status of this species. Louis Vardakas is a research associate at the Institute of Marine Biological Resources and Inland Waters, which is part of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, based in Kalamata in the Peloponnese Peninsula, southern Greece. His presentation today is titled Killifish Conservation in Greece, a 20-year effort. And Brian Zimmerman is the Director of Conservation and Science at Bristol Zoological Society and co-chair of the IUCN SSC Freshwater Fish Specialist Group. He will join us after the presentations for the panel discussion. As I mentioned, the session is being recorded and we'll upload it onto Shoal's YouTube channel and website after the event, so you can share it with any killifish loving friends who weren't able to make it today. So without anything more from me, it's over to Baran.
Okay, shall I start?
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning. And thank you, Michael, for introducing my long text. And also, I really like to thank you for inviting me to this great meeting. As you said, today I will talk about recent threat categories and conservation priorities for killifish in West Asia. When Michael told me about the concept of this meeting, I decided to select this topic to provide an overview of the situation, what's going on within a huge range, and Michael maybe would be beneficial before Alex and Luis go on with more specific conservation topics and their successful works on this topic. Secondly, as one of the assessors, I have to say that we have just recently completed and submitted the red list assessment of all killifish species in this region, of course, along with over 500 more freshwater fish species in this region. So I hope you enjoy my short talk about this topic. So, where is West Asia for most of you? It may be unknown, but this region is basically the western part of the Asia. and it significantly overlaps with the Middle East, and it typically includes the Arabian Peninsula and Turkey, Iran, and the Levant, and also some parts of Caucasus. And this parts of the world repeatedly mentioned in literature that this area is the diversification center of Eurasian killifishes, including the Phanidae, the family Phanidae. In this short talk, I will give you the species richness in this region, which is basically the number of species in each genera. And next, I will cover the latest Reddit profiles that we have just submitted, the Reddit profile of the species. And then I will talk about the main threats of these species. And finally, I will compile all with an outline of conservation priorities, and we'll take some questions from you. Now, let's take a look at why killfishes matter in West Asia. In other words, maybe we could say why we are here. Why some people are truly ranging throughout West Asia to find these beautiful fishes, or why some funders are funding these people to search to save the species. Basically, they are, first of all, they are endemic. That means they are restricted to a very limited range and that are not found in other parts of the world. Most of the species are restricted to maybe only a small isolated springs, isolated ponds or lagoons or small streams. So they are highly threatened. They are also ancient with their fossils date back to million years ago from the Tethys Sea. And they are also they have ecological importance in terms of I thought that they are so much impacted by habitat loss, pollution, invasive species, although they may also play a key role in ecosystems, and they have research value by having a fast growth biology, unique breeding or behavioral patterns, or something very fascinating issues. Many of the species are still poorly known, and our ex situ efforts, or also in situ efforts, are very fragile as far as I've seen, and many of the efforts are undermanaged. And beyond this, everybody knows that these are so beautiful, colorful, vibrant, so popular. So this is matters in West Asia. Let's moving forward to take a look at the species richness of the family Aphanida. We have only the only family in this region, West Asia, and the family includes about 45 species here. And these species are regarded under six different genera whose taxonomy has relatively recently been revised. Before these generic reconstruction, all of these species are belonging to the genus Aphanius. From these, in the slide, you can see Paraphanius, Aphanius, Esmailus, Cosvigichthys, Aphanios, and Anatolictis. The two other genera, Thalia and Apigaphanius, are from North Africa and from South Europe. So for species richness, we have nearly 13 species of Anatolictis and 7 species of Paraphanius, maybe as far as I remember, 9 species in Aphaniops. 2 species remain in Aphanius, Aphanius fasciatus and Aphanius almeriensis, and 6 species in Esmailus and monospecific genus Cosvigichthys ascoamatus. As I said, in West Asia, we focus on 6 genera, most of them are found in springs, marshes. Most of them also found in endorheic basins, endorheic small lakes. Most of the lakes are also have a very extreme conditions. And for the species richness, the highest richness occurs, as you can see in this map, in the south part of Turkey, which is called Lake District. And let me show this circles. And then in the Levant region and the Gulf Basin, including the Zagros mountain range. So these are the general picture of the species hotspots in West Asia for this family, Aphanidae. So to check the up-to-date conservation status that we have submitted, of the 41 species, 10 are critically endangered, 8 are endangered, 6 species is vulnerable, 2 are near threatened, only 13 species are least concerned, and one is already extinct. One is already extinct. One is also from Esmailus, must be extinct in the wild, but kept in captivity. So that means nearly 60% of this species are facing a high risk of extinction in the wild. This is really and a serious point, because they ranked as the second most threatened family after sturgeons in this region by species richness. And of these 41 species, 24 were assessed for the first time. This is because most of the species were later uncovered from species complexes, so they were not represented in the previous assessments. And from those, we have declining and increasing status of species. 3 species has declined in status: Anatolichthys anatoli, Cosphygictis ascoamatus, and Teleapoda. And 3 of them has been increased from the previous to the current status: Aphanius almeriensis, Apricaphanius beticus, Apricaphanius iberus. While most of these chains are genuine, that means reflecting the real shift in population status or threats, others are non-genius, resulting from improved data. Why we have improving data, why we have changed assessment methodology, or sometimes some taxonomic revisions can result in non-genuine change. So only Anatolichthys anatoli and Cosphygictis ascoamatus are having a genuine change, reflecting a real population decline in our assessments. And here are the top traits. As you can see in this chart, and it is not surprising that for this water scarce, water deficit region, we are talking about the Middle East, climate change, including droughts and unsustainable water abstraction, are the drivers of habitat loss. And finally, the loss. There is invasive species problem challenge in all of the region, with mostly from the mosquito fish, Gambusia obroki, we could say specifically. Uh, uh, these, for example, Gambusia are threatening 1/5 of the species of the whole genera. Then let's move on to some series examples of how habitats has becoming a victim of water use and climate change in West Asia. Here it is Insuyu Spring in central Anatolia. This place is the only home of Gobio insuyanus, is a critically endangered fish, and we had a very large population of Anatolichthys anatoli here. These pictures were taken from 2014 and 2022. And Sadly, I must say that in 2000, this year, even this small water, small polluted water has gone from this beautiful spring. So that means we lost one more population of many species here, including Anatolictis anatoli. We have here seven endemic species, which are point endemics. That means restricted to these springs and surrounding streams. Another example where we lost one population of Anatolictis fontinalis is from Spring Düger, another spring in central Anatolia. This species was maybe collected in 1990 by Wildecamp. Then we have seen first the trait was Gambusia holbrooki, and then water abstraction has vanished even Gambusia and all other aquatic organisms. One more popular case, as many of you maybe know, the lake border, the only habitat of Anatolictis rayanus, which has becoming a victim of water abstraction, and together with water abstraction, some other complicated issues like algae blooms are accompanied. And here you can see the decreased water quality and water amount. And one of the beautiful springs, once beautiful springs in Syria, the spring Barada, as a graveyard of some Paraphanius species here once exist. And another example that is at the edge of extinction or extinct in the wild is Anatolictis transgrediens, which found only in small springs of this Lake Ajigel. And the case in natural habitat is not good due to habitat loss, pollution, and invasive gambusia, invasive mosquito fish. But happily, we have hope to save the species. I should say, wait for the excellent presentation by Alex after me, who will tell you some success stories about this species. So I will not talk about much more about this species. And we have Afanyok Sirhani from Azrak wetland. This conservation story dates back to maybe 19 and 80s, and the species remains dependent on conservation as water has to be pumped they purchase the water and pump into the wetland to keep the water level high that the species can survive in this habitat. So this is highly vulnerable issue and challenging issue for Azrak wetland and this species. And one more encouraging event, although not about killifish, is the rediscovery of the Schistura christinae, the Batman River Lodge, who rediscovered by our friends and funded by the Shoals Search for the Lost Fishes program. And to mention a few more words about success that would be nice to share is my efforts that targeted on conservation of Anatolictis transgrediens basically started about a decade ago with my PhD, with very, very small support from Ruffle Foundation, from Freshwater Life, and finally a huge promising collaboration with Alex from ZSL and other partners that Alex will mention about from Istanbul Aquarium and the facility of Turkish Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Antalya. And I will not talk about this, all of which will be detailed by Alex in his talk. So building on what we have just witnessed, we must first secure the legal protection for key wetlands and springs and restore degraded sites. And we have to learn how to use water, how to regulate water. We have to manage to maintain minimum flow or to maintain minimum water level in some critical, at least some critical habitats. And maybe we learn how to remove we learn and teach how to remove invasive mosquito fish where it is feasible. I know it's a real challenge. We need to establish maybe well-planned ex situ populations, and ex situ efforts could be managed well. And maybe finally we standardize monitoring and research efforts to fill in the gaps in life histories and distribution of poorly known species. Uh, and maybe there will be some discussions or maybe some opinions of ideas in after all of the talks finished. And finally, for those who want to full species accounts, distributions, threat analysis, ecology, taxonomy, and much more, our book on the freshwater fishes of West Asia will soon be published online and will be also open for purchase. It will also contain complete Fanida chapter and all about approximately over 620 species, freshwater fish species in this region. Thank you very much for listening me. I hope that it serves as a overview of the topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Baran. That's brilliant. And thanks for sharing the details of the upcoming books. I know there's a lot of people on the Shoal team who'll definitely be very keen to take a read of both of those volumes. So thank you for that. And now
Thank you.
Alex is going to talk about the conservation actions and green status of the Achigol killifish.
Okay, hello everyone. Nice to see everyone. Thanks to Michael and Mike for hosting this webinar through Shoal. It's great to see everyone here, and nice to see some familiar faces in the chat as well. So hello to you and familiar faces. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about a specific species that Brian's been involved with heavily for many, many years ago with Anton Weisenbacher from Vienna Zoo and Hacettepe University in Turkey. And more recently with Baran Yoğurtçuoğlu, who's been leading a lot of the work in Turkey, and his presentation was excellent to highlight the depth and range of species in Turkey and neighboring countries, but also some of the threats they're imposing on some of the most threatened freshwater fish in the world. So my particular presentation is on the Achigol killifish, Anatilictes transgrediens, and the work we've been doing over the last 10 years. So there is a couple of videos in this presentation, so there might be a slight bit of lag. So hopefully the bandwidth will take it, but please bear with me. So a bit of a background to the Achigol killifish. It's critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. Transgrediens translates into transferring across the gradients. This particular species is very adaptable to salinity changes. The lake itself is almost full strength seawater, and then there is a lot of freshwater tributaries that feed into the lake. So it is a very adaptable species with regards to salinity gradients. It's endemic to Lake Achigol. It's not found anywhere else in the world. And the image on the screen is a male, which is at Whipsnade Zoo. So we have them at ZSL Whipsnade Zoo. And this is one of the male individuals. It's under a lot of pressure. And as Baran highlighted in his overarching threats in killifish, there's a multitude of pressures on this lake, some of which are quite overwhelming. And the invasive species Gambusia holbrooki is in great abundance across the lake, and that's been a detrimental impact to the populations, and literally the space they occupy is now overwhelming with the invasive Gambusia. There's a lot of water abstraction in the area. There's a lot of aquifers that feed into the lake, and there's a lot of mining going on with sodium sulfite, which is a real sulfate, sorry, which I'll show you on the next slide is quite sobering how much impact that the mining has had on this incredible and unique lake. And there is also small levels of pollution in there from the local communities, but generally it's the invasive species and the mining currently that is posing the biggest threats. We do hold this species at Whipsnade Zoo Aquarium, and I am something called an EP coordinator. So this is basically someone within the zoo industry that can coordinate the ex situ populations in a strategic way to make sure that we've got robust populations outside of the native range. And so I work with a couple of zoos in the European sector to try and bolster and safeguard this species, which is extremely threatened. So that's a role that I'm currently playing in line with the work that Baran's doing in situ. So it plays a nice role that we have that balance between the in situ and the ex situ elements to really bolster a real initiative to try and safeguard this species. So the lake itself is in southwest Turkey. There's a range of lakes in this district, one of which Baran mentioned in his presentation. Extremely unique, very unique water quality parameters. On the top right-hand side, you'll see a satellite image of the lake. You can see from the lake itself, it's completely been decimated on the north and the southwest part of the lake with the mining, and where the mining boundaries are, that was the original size of the lake many years ago. So that lake is now constrained to around 35 kilometers squared. So incredible pressure. I was just saying, can I use a laser pointer on here? Is there any way I can put a laser pointer?
I do not think so, I'm afraid.
Let me just check. Can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Fantastic. So all of these hearts on the image are the areas that myself and Brian and Baran and our colleagues, which I'll go into in a bit later, have done the surveys over the years to try and get an idea of where they've been marginalized. And now a lot of these areas are now, there is no killifish apart from one area. So if you can see two areas, one here is the corner of the salt mines. There's a very small population of transgredients there, but there is an abundance of the gambusia. So this particular population is extremely isolated. The main population is down here in one single tributary. And this bottom left-hand image just shows you now the fragility of this now micro-endemic, because they're completely constrained to this one tributary, which in total is about 2 kilometers long, but they only inhabit around 500 meters of that tributary. And what they do is they'll shift, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the presentation, they have that ability to shift between the salinities. So the actual salinity of the lake is full strength seawater. This is freshwater here. We were literally seeing the killifish swimming between full strength seawater and freshwater within seconds. So they have this incredible ability to adapt to their environment. And then this image on the bottom right is this tributary. So if you can imagine spinning around, you'll be looking at the mouth of the lake here. So very shallow, only 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters deep, maximum 15, 20 meters wide at the widest point. So when you think of that in a 3D volume, it's an incredibly small parcel of water where this one species is now constrained. So incredible pressure on this particular species, which used to inhabit the entire range of this lake. So one of the things we wanted to look at with Baran and through ZSL and other partners was to look at how we can move forward in a strategic way in trying to safeguard the species within our constraints. But we needed to make some steps to try and engage with partners in country to get and raise the profile and the fragility of this species and the habitat that they inhabit. So one of the things we agreed to do was meet and present the current conservation work to the ambassador to Turkey, which is fantastic, the UK ambassador, to really give them a sense of scale and the fragility of this particular species and the habitats. We wanted to look at conducting more comprehensive surveys. Those little heart symbols on the lake I showed you, they were the ones that we wanted to really get more data from to find out the distribution. Look at more detailed work on the IUCN green status, which I'll explain. Look at some emergency rescue plans with colleagues in country, and also look at strategic decision making on the ex situ populations, which I try and coordinate on a European level to try and safeguard them, and also work with the local Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Turkey as well. So this is a really good meeting we had in 2024. Bottom left is my colleague Lauren Johnson from Zoological Society of London, who accompanied me on the fieldwork surveys and met the UK ambassador to Turkey. Baran and I and Lauren presented the work and the threats and the impacts of the mining and the invasive species that are having on this habitat. It was a great engagement to show how we can work with the local government officials. We also had the local NGO called DKM, who were there to look at potentially advising on how we can optimize agricultural practices and looking at how we can engage with communities to try and work in an effective way to try and have a tangible output and trying to preserve this habitat and the species. And then the right-hand image is the director of the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and they have a network of 7 aquaculture facilities around Turkey: Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, and this is in Antalya, which is South Turkey, which is the closest aquaculture facility to the lake. And they agreed to take on the endemic killifish species, which is fantastic. They breed a lot of commercial species, but they do work with a lot of the sturgeon species for reintroduction into the Caspian and Black Sea. And they were willing to take on the endemic killifish to breed en masse as another population outside of the native range to bolster insurance populations. So really, really important to engage with these two sort of partners on this, and that we've got their full support. So that was a really encouraging first step in this sort of strategic approach to conserving the killifish. Literally, we finished at the embassy, we went to the ministry, and we went straight into the field. So we weren't messing about. We had a plan to try and get one of the most comprehensive data surveys we've done of this particular lake. It took about a week to do. So this was spearheaded by Baran Yoğurtçuoğlu, which is fantastic. His experience and knowledge of the species and the lake itself, all of the locations. It was his guidance that really helped, and a lot of the groundwork that Brian and Tony did from Vienna and Bristol Zoological Society really set the framework of how we can then start building on that to try and develop a more comprehensive data set. And then Lauren Johnson, who's in the image as well, she's great. She's one of the main sort of leaders in maintaining the fish at ZSL Whipsnade Zoo. Her knowledge from her ex situ side to keep these populations going, it was so important to really engage the team that work with them on a daily basis, is to see these species firsthand and the fragility of the habitat. So that was a really important step to engage with our stakeholders, is to have someone that works with these species on a daily basis. That was really important. And then just me as well, just joining it from various lenses, ZSL, the EP coordinator, and then the various divisions, and also from the IUCN Freshwater Fish Specialist Group, which is a nice multitude of angles that we can look at this from a holistic perspective. So there should be a video running now, but that on the right-hand side is Baran and Lauren taking some water samples and also testing the water for pH, conductivity, salinity, and a few basic parameters like ammonia and nitrite. And this is me just with my phone, just plomping it in the water. This is just at one of the springs on the outskirts of the lake. And this is the invasive species which we find in abundance. So it was just quite a distressing survey, because every body of water we were surveying, it was just the same thing. It was just Gambusia after Gambusia. So this just shows you the every single spring that feeds into the lake was inundated with the invasive species. But a beautiful part of the world, incredible landscape, very, very hot, but lots of other taxa that inhabit that area, as well as the fish, frogs, snakes, birds. It's a beautiful, unique lake. And if it does work, I hope it does from your end, but this is some drone footage I took of the lake. So if you remember from the photo I showed you, there was these tributaries that feed into the lake. We're moving towards that lake now. And this is the only viable tributary that's got the transgredients in abundance. Again, it's about 8 meters wide, 30 centimeters deep, and they only inhabit that 500-meter stretch. And as we're moving towards the lake, the salinity is slowly increasing. So the baseline parameters, is about 1.5 ppt, so that's 1.5 grams of salt per liter. But as you reach into the tributary, that's around 30 to 35 ppt. So incredibly unique habitat. You can see the scale of the lake. In the far distance, that's where the salt mines are on the north part of the lake. And this area here is almost the most sacred part, which houses this extremely fragile species. So when we finished the surveys, we all went back to our respective countries and we got back to our usual work, and then we're thinking, right, how can we look at getting some sort of safeguarding for this species in a way that's achievable short term? There are some other things like climate change, which we cannot change. A lot of pressures on the lake with mining and water abstraction. So what we were discussing, Baran had the idea of looking to try and translocate a population from Lake Hacettepe to his university in Hacettepe University in Ankara. And this is the first assisted colonization of transgredients that's been done. And this is in a huge campus lake in Ankara, in Hacettepe, and it got a lot of attention in the press and the local communities, and is a real important step into trying to safeguard this species out of its native range. So these are the lakes that at the Hacettepe University where he was looking to introduce them to. So this is still an ongoing project, and Baran will be feeding back on how well they're doing. But this was just a first step in trying to provide another habitat within Turkey to preserve this species. And then we were trying to look at other options and trying to get collaborations with colleagues within Turkey to look at the ex situ side, things in our control that we can do short term with high outputs. So we had some great colleagues from Istanbul Aquarium, Ur and Dilek, who run the aquarium at Istanbul. And we wanted to try and engage with an aquarium that could actually take on this species in an ex situ capacity. And what we decided to do is bring Mehmet and Ur to Whipsnade to work with the species, collect the eggs, work with this team to really understand how to manage them. They are experts in fish breeding across marine and freshwater fish. They're very experienced, but this is an opportunity to engage with the teams that manage them at Whipsnade, but also to learn some specific skill sets to try and maintain these longer term at Istanbul Aquarium. So that was really, really important to get that in place, to have some sort of in-country ex situ institution involved in the populations in Europe. So from there, Dilek, who's in the foreground here, an incredible woman that's driven a lot of the work with Ur, who's in the posing with his hands on his hips, and the colleague Mehmet waving at the screen. These three guys came down with the Ministry of Agriculture and Baran with all the permits to try and rescue this population. And from all the training that they got from Whipsnade Aquarium, the next step was then to collect the species with the permission of the ministry, with Baran, and take them back to Istanbul as strategic ex situ populations within Turkey. So that was a real important step. And then the idea then is once they start breeding them, they've got 3 populations there. The plan is then to disseminate them and to make sure that we can provide more insurance populations in an ex situ capacity. So from there, we wanted to think, right, well, we know we've done all that work, and we wanted to get a little bit more detail on their status. We know they're critically endangered, and one of the things we wanted to look at was approaching the green status to look at the species recovery trajectory. But we wanted to know to quantify it through the IUCN of how bad the situation is. So if you can see on here, the status on the IUCN goes from not evaluated to extinct, and we know that the killifish is extinct, critically endangered. So what we wanted to do is look at how we can measure species recovery through the metrics of the IUCN, through the green status. And this is just a quick oversight of looking at how conservation impact could actually improve the trajectory of species recovery. There's a lot of parameters that we're looking at that are out of our control, but in the interim, we're trying to look at safeguarding them in an ex situ capacity. But this is a real nice way of displaying the fragility of species that's almost on the brink of extinction. You know they are constrained to one tributary. So we wanted to get more detail of what that looks like within the IUCN Red List. And this is the one that was published last year, critically endangered and critically depleted. So we knew that this was going to be the category that was showcased on the green status. But what it does show you on the bottom left-hand side is that there's only a 15% recovery of this species back to the native range. When that is quite a scary metric to really look at. But it does come in line with the work that we've done, the observations, the lack of distribution of this species. It just really reinforces that this has a very, very low chance of species recovery. And that's why we need to do as much as we can to try and safeguard this species for many, many generations. So finally, I just wanted to say a big thank you to a number of people, Dr. Rebecca Young and Magdalena Sejan from IUCN Green Status team, to give us the time to try and work through the metrics to get that status of the killifish. Again, huge thanks to Baran Yoğurtçuoğlu. He's been a real driver for this work. His guidance and expertise has been the forefront of all this work. So I do thank him for his contributions and his enthusiasm. And then obviously with Urth and Dilek at Istanbul Aquarium, they've now got safeguarded this species at Istanbul Aquarium. So we're looking forward to seeing how we can move forward. They are now EASA members. So this is the European Association for Zoos and Aquariums. So they are now a full-time member, which will allow the movement of animals more efficiently with participating institutions. So congratulations to Istanbul. Also, Brian Zimmerman, he was a big driver on some of the assessment work that we've done with the green status, and also the sort of benchmarking, all the foundation of the survey work we've done that was 15, 20 years ago. And also my colleague Lauren Johnson that joined us from ZSL to participate in the surveys. So thank you for your time. Hope that was an interesting insight into one of the species that is currently under threat in Turkey, but I am hopeful that we can do the best we can within our constraints. There's a lot more work to be done. I think there's a lot of work that we can do with our NGOs, DKM, to look at optimizing like the agricultural side, looking at how we can work more closely with the salt mining companies so that they are more sympathetic to the work. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on this lake, and it's just another example of biodiversity being lost at an astronomical level on a global scale. So it's quite overwhelming, but we're going to do what we can within our constraints to safeguard the Anatolik these transgredients. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. That really was an interesting insight, and I really hope that the videos worked for other people. I could see them fine on my laptop, but I hope that other people could see them too, because there was some really beautiful footage there. It really gives a sort of idea as the topography of the areas that you're working in. So over to Louis to talk about the 20-year effort to conserve killifish in Greece.
Yeah. Well, so is everything okay? Can you see my presentation?
No.
No, oh, not again.
Not yet.
Now?
No. I'm not sure why. I can share it this side if that's easier, but you should be able to.
Yeah. Let me try once again. Yeah. Once more. I
It's looking
think we
promising.
will handle it.
It seems yeah, I can see your screen.
Yeah. Works now?
Yeah, we can see you shared the Chrome browser, so we can see the Zoom tab. Yeah, that's it. And then if you play it from the start, it should load in full screen mode.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So thank you, Michael, before the introduction, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this.
Is this glitching for other people or is it
Only the Zoom. Oh, maybe we have I think we have a delay or something like that. Let's try it again. Now.
we've lost him. What should we? I've got his presentation here. Obviously, I don't know the content, so I can't present it. But Brian, would you be able to would you be able to jump in, or I'm not sure what other solutions we got really.
I haven't seen his presentation, so I could manage to maybe try and get through.
Should we try it and just sort of hope that he returns soon?
Okay. Sure. If you could share it, Michael, then I'll try and
Would you prefer
channel Louis and see.
Shall I email you or shall I just pull it up and present it?
Feedback.
Oh,
Sorry for that. I don't know what happened. Maybe the connection, because I'm in a coffee spot here in a remote village in Greece. So yeah. Shall we try again once more?
here we go. Yeah, it's just the challenges of working from the field. Louis didn't mention it earlier, but he's right up in northern Greece working as we speak for these fish.
So is it okay now, the presentation? Did it upload it?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Okay. Excellent. Not in a PowerPoint mode, is it?
No, it's in PowerPoint mode. It's not in presenter mode. So if you click on the play from start, then it should full screen it, hopefully. If not, then it might be easier if I do it here and you. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let's start. So I was saying thank you very much for the invitation to be part in this very interesting webinar on killifish conservation. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning, depending where you are. Today, I would like to take you through a journey that spans more than 20 years. So, journey focused on protecting two of Greece's most endangered freshwater fish, the Corfu killifish, Valentia letronexi, and the Peloponnese killifish, Valentia robertae. So the goal of my talk is to give you an overview of the research and the conservation work we have carried out so far at the Hellenic Center of Marine Research, especially the work led by Eleni Kalogianni and her team to help secure the future of this. Especially when it comes to freshwater fish. Over 40% of our native freshwater species are endemic. Freshwater fish species are endemic. But but this uniqueness comes with a cost. A large number of these species are under threat. We have one extinct already, 11 critically endangered species, 32 are endangered, and 3 are listed as vulnerable. So altogether, about 36% of Greece's freshwater fish fauna is at the risk of extinction. So these numbers show just how important conservation work can be and why projects that we'll share you today matter. So up until recently, we thought Greece had just one species of killifish. But in 2014, genetic and morphometric data revealed a clear north-south split in the population, leading to the recognition of 2 separate species. The Corfu killifish, found from southern Albania to western Greece, and the Peloponnese killifish found in southeast western and northwestern parts of Greece and Peloponnese. When it comes to threats, as all the previous speakers told, the killifish face 2 main threats. First, there's habitat loss from water obstruction, pollution, from physical changes to their habitat. And second, they're under pressure from an invasive species, the eastern mosquito fish, the Gambusia holbrooki. This species is widespread in Greece also and extremely aggressive, posing a serious challenge to the native killifish. So these pressures are clearly reflected in their conservation status. Both species are now listed as critically endangered. The Corfu killifish is one of the top 100 most threatened species globally, and it is also been identified as the second most climate sensitive freshwater fish in Europe. The Peloponnese killifish also is threatened. Similar threat, and it lives in a total area of less than 10 square kilometers. That's smaller than many city parks. So over the past 2 decades, we have implemented 5 research projects to support the conservation of the Greek killifish. The project Greek Killifish laid the foundation, providing the first baseline data on population size, distribution, and habitat requirements. The FishNet Greece project introduced captive breeding and public awareness, as well as some pilot translocations. The Resilient project, I will not say much in this presentation, introduced innovative monitoring tools such as eDNA analysis to detect population with minimal disturbance. And Decacon and Afresh focused on reproductive biology, physiological tolerances, and creating refuge populations. So now in the next slides, I will walk you through some of the results and actions from these projects. So the Greek Killifish project, which ran only for 6 months from June to December 2005, was our first in-depth effort to understand the needs of the Corfu killifish. We focused on collecting baseline data on abundance, distribution, and habitat preferences. Field surveys were carried out across 14 aquatic systems in Western Greece, covering 19.5 sampling sites. And as you can see, we used various methods. The results, though, were pretty alarming with systems, and later added 2 more sites. The westernmost and the southernmost population were already extinct or close to it, and the rest were in poor shape, small, scattered, and with very low numbers. In total, we recorded 136 individuals. These findings of this project indicated a severely fragmented and declining population, making clear the urgent need for immediate and target conservation actions. So next came the project FishNet Greece, which aimed to monitor the status of the killfish population, establish captive breeding stocks, and implement a pilot translocation, and also launch some public awareness campaigns. So to better understand how the population was doing, we applied the Living Planet Index using fish sampling data from 2005 to 2018. And the results showed, as you can see in the figures, a dramatic drop, over 90% decline in both Valencia species. Here you are some photos from the camping breeding efforts at the Castoria Aquarium. We had partial success. The fish survived, but did not reproduce there. On the other hand, breeding at the ZSL facilities in London was successful, and I think so it's still ongoing. As part of the FishNet Greece, we carried out also our first pilot translocation of the Corfu killifish. Before releasing any fish, we conducted a detailed feasibility assessment to carefully select the suitable sites. This involved checking key ecological factors like water flow, vegetation, water quality, and most importantly, we had to confirm that there was absence of the invasive species. So even though the planning was thorough and well designed, we know that long-term success depends on ongoing post-release monitoring, and we need to confirm its success. We also worked on raising awareness, especially among young peoples. That's why we organized 3 educational activities with local school students, combining lab sessions and field trips to connect them with freshwater ecosystems. We also held 4 online sessions to the HCMR in your classroom program, all focused on the Corfu killifish. And finally, we also produced a short film. You can find it on YouTube to help tell the story of this little-known species. Project Degacon, which ran from 2018 to 2020, looked deeper into the killifish biology and ecology. It focused on reproductive behavior, environmental tolerance for heat and salinity, and behavior in the presence of mosquito fish. So starting with reproduction, our observation revealed a unique strategy. The Peloponnese killifish does not build nests or defense its territory or care for its young. Instead, it relies on sneaky mating tactics known as kleptogamy and even cannibalism. We also tracked early development closely from a single fertilized egg to swimming larva. It all happens in just 18 days. This information assists us to refine breeding conditions in captivity or semi-natural settings. Next, we tested how well killifish tolerate heat and salinity. Our initial hypothesis was that the lower resistance to extreme temperatures and salinity was expected for the killifish. However, they showed similar physiological threshold with the Gambusia holbrooki. However, in this situation, the Gambusia, the mosquito fish, still has an edge because they thrive in more variable and disturbed environments, which are becoming more common under climate change. And it gets a bit worse if we think at the behavioral level. In control, where killifish were passive and stress-prone. They avoided to be on the open space. They stay hidden. They show little movement. And this puts them at a clear disadvantage in shared habitats of the mosquito fish are high. Finally, let's end with a success story as part of the Fresh project. Our aim was to establish a breeding population of the Corfu killifish to a modifying spring-fed habitat inside a human settlement. Before the translocation, we conducted some feasibility analysis again to see if the site is appropriate for the Corfu killifish. In 2001, in 2021, we released 40 other fish, and by 2022, we confirmed breeding with larvae and juveniles present in this area. as you know, is a race against time. But after 2 decades of work, we have now solid data on populations. We have insights into the reproduction and tolerance of the species. We have good monitoring tools, and we have a successful habitat restoration so far. Build on what we have learned so far and take conservation even further. That means restoring more habitats, improving captive breeding success here in Greece, continue to explore how could they eventually control the invasive mosquito fish, as Baran told previously. But also important is to engage local communities, push stronger policy support, because long-term conservation needs people just to as much as science. I think that's all. Thank you. Oh. Can you hear me now?
Sort of.
Mike?
Yes, sort of. I'm not sure if it's glitching at my end or glitching for everybody, but apologies for anybody who had some kind of technological issues there. I couldn't quite hear a lot of it. Definitely got the crux of it. I've got most of the important information,
I
but
think
a lot of
we
the
have
sound
it.
was a bit glitchy.
Mike, can you hear me?
No, not so easily. Okay. It's the challenges of working with potentially dodgy Wi-Fi connections. But we have some time now. Hopefully, people have some questions. I've come prepared with a few questions, but hopefully, people online have also got some questions for the panelists. Thanks everyone for your presentations. They were really interesting. But Baran, how do you describe new species? And why are these killifish in West Asia undescribed so far?
Thank you, Michael. I have to say that today is really extremely unlikely to discover a fish species that is completely unknown to science. Most new species are actually a part of species complexes that are only recognized through integrated approach, combining some different approach or methods like morphological approach and molecular data. But the most the most relevant example for this case maybe the Corfu and Pelenops killifish of Greece, why maybe he mentioned you would recognize that the species was once a single species like Corfu killifish, and then until 2000, as far as I remember, 2014, then by using molecular data, the second species has been recovered from the single lineage. And as for the undescribed species of killifish, it's a sad story for West Asia because um, many of these, at least there are very few. One maybe at least one species in Paraphanius and one or two species from Aphanios. These are from the regions of unrest regions that having a conflict, long-lasting conflicts through for example, in Syria, in Yemen. So while some data, as far as I know, was collected in the past, uh, it's now nearly impossible to gather additional information mostly due to safety concerns and access issues. So these are still remain undescribed for in West Asia.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And Alex, around Lake Achigol, did you engage with the local communities? And if you did, were they aware of the species and just how sort of scarce it is?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did indeed do that. We took advantage of while we were there to engage with the locals to gauge what the thoughts were they aware of a killifish that's endemic. And myself and Baran were talking. I was talking in Turkish because my Turkish is rubbish. But Baran was saying that when he was talking to local farmers, they are aware that this killifish was present around the boundaries of the lake. They have seen a decline over the years, and they are sympathetic to the pressures that they see themselves with the mining. But it's that balance because we know that one of the things I didn't really go into detail was that there's a huge monoculture of corn on the south part of the lake, which monoculture has a real negative impact to habitats anyway. But it was that balance of them, looking at maintaining a livelihood to provide an income for their families. But one thing that is an output that we really need to work on is we've got this NGO called DKM, who are experts in Turkey in optimizing agricultural use. So I think they looked at the work they were doing, and they looked at the impact of this agriculture on this particular lake, and there could be a real nice collaboration with the communities to say, okay, this is your current sort of status with your farming. We could improve things for you, but also sort of have a safeguard plan to optimize it to ensure it's not impacting the tributaries where the killifish are from. So that's the conversation that we would like to revisit. They are aware of the killifish species there. They've seen a decline over the years. So that's probably the most effective way moving forward, is to try and engage with them to see how we can work together to ensure that they have a long-term livelihood and income, but also to safeguard the habitat as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And somebody anonymous has asked on the chat, has the Greek killifish made it to the illegal wildlife trade? And if so, is that a concern? I'm going to put that over to Brian in the first instance because he hasn't had a chance to speak very much just yet.
All right, thank you. Very interesting question, whoever posted that. So illegal wildlife trade, the species is not protected by CITES. And I don't know if there are any plans to do that, which is the main body that would classify the species on some level of protection in terms of paperwork needed for moving them. I would say the number of people interested in potentially trading in that fish is relatively small. So I don't think there's a very large scale movement of these killifish, but they are protected nationally in Greece and in the EU. Which means that there are restrictions in terms of having them and keeping them. And I think, that's probably a concern for some people out there that are keeping them on a hobby level. But, in terms of the scale of a problem and illegal wildlife trade contributing to the decline, maybe Louis has more thoughts on that, but I would say that the risk from wildlife trade is relatively low for the two species involved.
Okay, great. Louis, would you like to add anything to that as well?
Yeah, I think the most species here in Greece, I don't think they put them in an aquarium or something. The freshwater fish species, they don't have something, any species here in Greece that maybe in a small scale, in a local scale, some, but it's here in Greece they don't used to have that hobby for aquariums. They don't use freshwater fish species from the wild to their houses. So yeah, it's very limited, to be honest.
Okay. And thank you. Another question for Baran. Which killifish species in particular in West Asia are most likely to become extinct, and why?
Great question. One species is maybe I call this, it is Anatolictis irregularis. I call this species a Turkish devil-soul pupfish because it was described from a sulfur cave in southwest Turkey. and the species was in a stable condition, just protected by site protection of a touristic range. But then recently I have heard that Gambusia holbrooki has introduced the pond. It was only maybe 10 or 20 meter square area that the species occurs. So this is an alarming issue that we also discussed the species Anatolitis irregularis to take under ex situ conservation. We discussed it with Alex, and he told me that the next step could be this species. And also one more is Anatolitis danfordi. This is also restricted to very small wetland area which has been affected from water abstraction seriously, and I don't know if there's still some fish in this thing. This I talked about West Asia for Afanide, but when we talk the whole family, maybe Teleapoda from North Africa and Apicaphanio saurensis were the most endangered or at the edge of extinct species. That's all we have.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much. And one more question for Alex. Would you be looking to investigate other species across Turkey that might have similar pressures, like the Achigal killifish?
Yeah, I think it was just following on from Baran comments, so that this species called Antilopes irregularis is found in a recreational area, which is part of a cave system in southwest Turkey. So, the recent news from Baran saying that we now have the Gambusia in this area, which is an incredibly small space to occupy both an invasive and an endemic. That there will need to be some sort of action from there. So that will be another strategy with a similar framework to Lake Achigal, is to try and engage with the locals and look at the importance of maybe the owners of the recreational cave area, to see the importance of the species and look maybe eradicating that particular population of Gambusia. And then moving forward is again, just repeating what Baran said, we've got Anatolitis danfordi in ex situ populations. We have them at Whipsnade and they're doing very well, but we would love to do more comprehensive surveys following Baran's guidance on this lake, very similar to the Lake Achigal, and then identify the threats, the distribution, guessing that the NGO involved. So almost like a cookie cutter, just use that template and then move around the particular lakes. Again, there's more lakes in that area that are endemic. Lake Buda, we've got Lake Salda, which are bigger volumes of water. But I think we need to prioritize the ones that are in extremely precarious situations, especially this recreational area that's like 20 meters squared, which is frightening footprint for one species. So I think that will be an action that we can try and discuss with Baran and colleagues in country, that we can look at a strategy with that particular species.
Yes, thanks, Alex. And James Warner is asking on the chat, question for Louis. Are there efforts to protect either of the Corfu populations of V. lutonexi at Sidari or Dacia?
A very good question, pointed also. We went recently, before a couple of years, 2 years, I think, to Sidari, and we did some very interesting social behavioral experiments. A colleague of ours in the HMR, John Leris, we did some experiments there to see the behavior with the Sidari stream has a barrier, and downstream of the barrier we have Gambusia and the Corfu killifish, and upstream the barrier we don't have the mosquito fish. So we did some experiments to see if these two populations, split population, are differ in the behavior, if those downstream are more shy, the Valencia are more shy and stuff like that. So we are currently analyzing the data. But to be honest, we haven't done something to protect because that stream in Sidari is heavily polluted from olive oil waste. So I think so that something must be there. We have to do something there. But so far, we haven't done something to conserve the species there.
Marvelous. Thanks so much. And Benji Barsa is asking, it's sort of a point that I was going to come onto in the closing remarks anyway. It's a really good point, Benji. He says that I see we have quite a few aquarists and enthusiasts on this call, and one question I ask myself is how can conservation groups and researchers make the most of their expertise and data from the field? I'm not sure about Turkey and Greece, but I know from navigating Facebook groups of fish enthusiasts in certain regions in Africa that you can find information not even present on the IUCN or in scientific literature. I found AZE, and KBA trigger species in news sites, for example. It's a really good point, and it's such a sort of powerful approach to collaborate with individuals sort of outside of the the conservation community or outside of the echo chambers, and it would be really useful to hear from people who are working with killifish in the wild or come across killifish in the wild to kind of open up those lines of communication between you guys, between the researchers and people who may get access to information that some of the researchers don't. So has anybody else got any more questions? If not, then oh, Brian.
Yeah, I had a question. I've been making a couple of notes during Baran and Alex's talk, and I know Alex and I have spoken about this recently a little bit, but you mentioned, Baran, earlier about the ex situ populations and the large number of species that are under threat in Turkey based on your recent red list assessments. What capacity is there in Turkey at universities, research facilities, aquariums to be able to maintain ex situ populations as insurance populations of all of Turkey's killifish?
Very good question, Brian. We have indeed very nice and huge capacities, especially belonging to the ministry. One of the most relevant facility was in Antalya. Alex has seen it. And also we have some IAZA members in Faruk Ziyalcin Zoo, Istanbul Aquarium. But the issue is that I always told people who engage to having some killifish species or other endemic species, I always told them, please just breed one species at once, because it's very highly likely that in maybe in Europe, I heard very much about hybrids, very much about mixed populations or mixed genetic admixtures. So this is a huge problem, and the most important problem of the exit captive breeding in terms of these facilities. So the capacity is good, but they need to do this in an appropriate way.
Brilliant. Thanks, Baran. And Matt Ford has just written a point and a question in as well. Hello, everyone. Not a question, but rather a brief update on the IUCN Red List statuses of the 3 relevant Spanish species. That's Aprea Caphanius, Baeticus, and Iberus, and Valencia hispanica for those interested. Matt served as the lead assessor for the recently published updates for this group. However, neither Matt nor the reviewers were fully satisfied with the assessment outcomes, and these are likely to be revisited later this year. It's an interesting point. And he also asks, what are the experts' opinion on stocking captive bred individuals as a conservation solution for Aphanidae and Valencia species? I'm not sure who's best to answer that, but
I have a question to clarify. Matt, are you talking about reintroductions using zoo or aquarium bred fish to go back into the wild? Is that what you're asking specifically?
We need to get Matt on as a panelist. He's probably furiously typing away at the moment. But Matt, if we don't answer your question right now, we will come back to you. We'll email back to you. We'll speak with the panel. No, he's referring to reinforcement of existing populations.
Using zoo or aquarium bred ex situ. I mean, if that's the situation, then there's obviously guidelines from IUCN on doing that properly, and you would have to do a very, very good disease risk assessment and analysis of those populations before you would reintroduce them into an existing population. It's also true of any translocation of fish from one location to the wild, from one to another. And the guys in Greece were very much involved in doing that a few years ago. And the level of in-depth investigation that took place before that translocation happened required quite a bit of research and analysis, looking at mitigation against the risk of transferring parasites from one population to a naive population. So I think all of that, any action like that, requires quite a bit of detailed work in advance before proceeding with it.
Cool, brilliant. Thank you, Brian. And thank you to all the panelists. Unless there are any more questions, if there are, then fire them in and we'll get back to you soon.
Sorry, I've got another question. I know I'm a panelist, but I just be answering questions. But
No, the more the merrier.
Since we've got the Greek team and the Turkish team together, and just talking about Alex's presentation about transgredients and Achigol and the salinity tolerances, and you were saying how they can survive in super high salinity levels and easily move from one to the other. And knowing that the Greek team have done salinity tolerances and thermal tolerances for Valencia, I'm just wondering, first of all, first part of the question is, I can't remember if you said that the Gambusia also survived in those high salinity tolerances, was my first question. And secondly, are the Anatolichthyes able to complete their life cycle in both hypersaline and pure freshwater environments? And if not, or if we don't know, is that an option for research to be done? Potentially, using some of the examples that Yanis did with his work with Valencia. And then if there is a threshold that the Gambusia cannot tolerate, is that potentially one of the conservation strategies for the species, basically, where the Gambusia can't live in the exact same environment that the Achilles can?
Yeah, so the first question about the tolerances, I know from Baran might be able to correct me on this, but we knew from some of the initial assessments that the Gambusia could tolerate up to 20 ppt or around that. It was around 50% salinity or slightly higher, and then there was a decline in the population.
It can reach up to 35 or 40.
Oh, really? Okay.
PBT. But the disadvantage of Gambusia to hypersaline water is when the water flushes suddenly or in a short term, the species cannot cope with this high salinity range. But when you receive water, like in Acıgöl, they receive hypersaline waters gradually from the ponds to the freshwater. Then it becomes acclimated or adjusted to this salinity and can cope with up to 40 or 45 maybe ppt water. So one solution, if we use this saline water to control the population or to support the native populations, to flush the water at once for huge amounts of salty water to the small springs to get rid of Gambusia and have fresh transgredients. Maybe this is a way.
And I think, Brian, to your second point, yes, absolutely. Research. It would be great to do some work in the aquariums to look at the tolerances and look at the fecundity of breeding and egg production in the different salinities. And that'd be a really interesting one. Almost like at the back of your interactions with Gambusia, with the Valencia, there's so much more work that we could do with interactions with the environment and also the invasives. So I think that will have a lot of scope for sure.
If there's a very snowy winter in the region in Turkey, and there's a lot of meltwater in the spring and a rainy season, and Etchegol fills up, some of the water is replenished. Do you think it's likely that the Killies will recolonize some of the areas where they formerly were found, and reestablish?
I have witnessed totally frozen fish survive from totally frozen ice. I have once forgot to take some few individuals from my backyard to the aquarium, and I realized that all of the water in the tank was completely frozen. I said, "Oh, the fish has gone." And when the spring comes, I witnessed that that the individual starts swimming just the ice has become melting. So how this evolutionary explanation can be done, but this is really not only about transgredients. I also witnessed this for Anatolictis marascentensis, and this make me think that all the Anatolictis, at least the genus, has the capacity to cope with very low temperatures, water temperatures.
Another question from James Warner, who's been very active on the chat and in the Q&A box. He asks, is there any further assessment of the probable V. roberti populations between the Gulf of Angrakikos and Petra, e.g. the river Achelous and river Astakos, as to whether they may be a new species? I think that's probably one for Louis, maybe.
Yeah, no further assessment for that. There's no further assessment. If they're separate species. No.
That was an easy answer. Thank you. And one final question, unless there any more come in. This is to everybody. What are the main limitations for conservation action? Is it money or partners or solutions or something else entirely?
Just looking at it from my perspective, the partners are there. You've got the buy-in from all stakeholders. I think the big one is money to drive it and have a consistent deliverable output. Because sometimes if you apply for funding, Brian is more well seasoned to this than me, but you might get a small pot of money to deliver some outputs. That money dries up, and then you don't know when the next core funding comes in. So you're not going to get a consistent roadmap. So it is heavily dictated by funds to give a consistent year-on-year deliverable, because even going back to the lake one year to the next, it completely changes. There's more gambusia, there's more pressures, so a lot can change within the gaps between funding, and those changes could be absolutely detrimental to the species in a negative way. So that maybe other colleagues can say something different, but that's what I see from the work in Achelous.
So
I agree with Alex, but I will also say there's political will, is a problem. Let's face it, these species, so many threatened ones, they've been assessed. Some of them are protected nationally, or regionally, and they're still at threat. The places they live, these tiny little habitats, are not protected. Anybody can go in there and do whatever they want, and they are doing whatever they want. To me, the funding is really, really important to set up the program and to do the research and to develop a conservation strategy. But that's only going to work if there's actual political will, and that these sites are protected and the species that are living in them are genuinely protected by legislation and enforcement?
Yeah, good question, good answers. So the partners and the solutions are there, and everything's ready to roll. Just the perennial conservation challenges of funding and political will. Cool. Well, if everyone's happy, then I'll start to wrap things up. Thank you so much to you guys, Baran, Alex, Brian, Louis. It's been really fascinating to learn more about your work and the amazing species that you work with. Thank you to the viewers for joining us. We have viewers from right around the world, including from Tanzania, India, Gabon, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and the USA. So that's really, really fantastic to see. Shoal are currently developing a killifish program for the world's most threatened killifish. And if you're working on killifish conservation yourself, I think judging by the chat and the questions, some of you people are, or if you know anybody who is, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Please get in touch at info@shoalconservation.org. We'd also love to create a list of all the people who are interested in global killifish conservation. Shoal can try and manage this group, so please do get in touch if you're interested in global killifish conservation. And if you have any media, any photos or videos and stories from the field, from the killifish conservation that you might be working on yourself, we'd love to feature your work on Shoal's website and social media. So if you have any stories from the wild that you'd like to share, please do drop us a message. If anybody has any questions or thinks of any questions after the event that weren't answered during the session, please send them over to info@shoalconservation.org and I'll forward them to the panelists and get back to you as soon as possible. The recording for this session will be uploaded to Shoal's YouTube and website later today, so point your friends and colleagues over to the link. Feel free to post over social media and remember to tag Shoal so that we can repost. You can stay updated with Shoal news and updates from the wider world of freshwater species conservation through our social media channels. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky, so head over there and give us a follow if you haven't done so already. Follows really do help us get out the message about freshwater conservation around the world. Please sign up to our monthly newsletter on the website if you're not already subscribed, and that will keep you updated on all the kind of future webinars that we're going to be holding as well, including a follow-up to this one on killifish, the date of which has not yet been confirmed, but it will likely be, well, it will definitely be in the next 2 months, likely early July. So keep an eye on all the comms channels to stay in the loop. Thank you so much again, all the panelists, and thank you everybody for watching, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Michael and Shoal, for arranging.
Thank you.
Great. Thank
very
you all.
much.
Thank you also for all
Thanks,
of the
Michael.
audience.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye then.
Bye-bye.